Hello everyone, my name is Akira. I'm a pianist, piano teacher, and a translator who's lived in 3 different countries. Many of you have asked what method books I use, so I'm going to just talk about that today. It seems like many of my audiences are active piano teachers and self-learners. By the way, I don't recommend learning piano without taking any lessons because you could be wasting a lot of time. Piano teachers can help you learn the piano in the most efficient ways. With that said, I know you're gonna still try to do it. Like I take allergy medicines with coffee even though it's not recommended. So I'm gonna share these tips so you can try to learn by yourself with as much help from YouTube. Before I start, as always, I wanna say a huge thank you to my Patreons on patreon.com. With your help, I'm getting closer and closer to making these videos more often. And if you're kind enough to support me for $3 or $10 a month, I'll leave the link to my Patreon page in the description. With that said, let's start. First of all, you're gonna have to understand what method books are. Method books are the books teachers and students use to learn the piano, and in those books, each concept is introduced one by one in an organized manner. They're usually divided into different levels, and for each level, they usually have lesson book, performance book, sometimes called recital book or any other names, and a theory book. On top of that, many books have some supplemental books like note writing, Christmas books, pop tunes, etc. Each series curriculum is different, and their level system is different too. So level 1 in one book may be different from level 1 in another book. But they all try to achieve the same goal, which is to teach the students all the concepts necessary to advance into intermediate level. Although which book is better depending on the teacher or the student. But today I'm going to introduce what exact books I use for my beginners. The very first material I use for my beginner student is a piece of paper. If you don't know about this piece of paper, you haven't watched all my tutorials, so go back and watch them. This is a paper I use to teach my students musical alphabets and how to do basic pentascale exercises with curved correct finger shape. When the student can play these basic exercises without collapsing their fingers, that's when we move on to the books. When it comes to method books, the book of my choice is Piano Adventures. But for the very first level, I use Alfred Basic Piano Series. The reason for that is Alfred moves a little quicker in the first level. In Alfred's level 1A, it starts from what we call pre-notation. That means that you don't know how to read the lines and spaces yet. So we're introducing students to basic playing using just rhythm and finger numbers. Students know which keys to play by looking at the picture of the keyboard. We start from using just black keys and move on to white keys. And when it comes to white keys, we switch from using finger numbers to key names to indicate which keys to play. During this time, students learn basic concepts like forte, piano, mezzo forte, time signature, and so on. After playing a few pieces like that, then students are introduced to using 5 lines and 4 spaces, aka staff. You're gonna play only left hand first and only right hand and combine them because in piano you use right and left both hands. As the music gets gradually more complicated, you're introduced to slurs and legato and different hand positions, and this level concludes with sharps and flats. Piano Adventures does similar things, but it takes 2 levels. Primer level and book 1, meaning we spend more time in each concept. Although there's nothing wrong with that, sometimes spending too much time on each concept can decrease students' motivation. Another reason why I use Alfred 1A over Piano Adventures Primer and Level 1 is that Alfred gives me the opportunity to introduce my students to technique like playing right hand legato while left hand's not playing legato. In this particular piece, students have to play right hand legato while left hand not playing legato. Because if your left hand stays on the keys, you're gonna end up in holding the G through and not playing 3 times. So your left hand has to release the key while right hand cannot release the key in order to do legato. A lot of students actually struggle with this technique, but I think it's really good to teach this early on. In Piano Adventures, it generally tries to avoid it, and in this piece's case, it even tries to avoid having both hands playing at the same time. Again, by the time you have learned all the concepts you need to learn, by the time you've finished all the books, what to teach in what order can be personal preference. But from the next level on, I start using Piano Adventures. While using Alfred's level 1A, I also use the recital book and theory book. Recital book has many pieces that reinforces the concepts you learned in the lesson book, and theory book teaches the theory associated with each concept. I find theory extremely important. To be a good musician, you have to know how to write music, or at least the basics of it. So when you get to the advanced music, you can understand and recognize the patterns and structures. That'll make a huge difference in your ability to learn new music and memorize them. When the student finishes Alfred's level 1A, I move on to Piano Adventures level 2A. Remember, the level system is different depending on the method. So Alfred's level 1A does not go to Piano Adventures level 1B. And at the same time, this is when my student starts on
Dozen a Day.
Dozen a Day is the book that focuses on your technique. And for these books, I have separate videos. So if you haven't watched them, please check them out too. For Piano Adventures, I use their lesson book, performance book, and theory book. Recital book becomes performance book in Piano Adventures, but they're basically the same thing. They both have music that reinforces concepts and skills you learn from lesson book. And I generally stick to Piano Adventures through level 2A, 2B, 3A, and 3B. By the time you finish 3B, you will have learned all the basic concepts and skills that you will need for the intermediate level. And the last thing you learn in 3B is 16th notes. But at the same time, you're also doing Dozen a Day, and Dozen a Day teaches 16th notes as well. Piano Adventures also have level 4 and 5, but those repertoire starts overlapping with other intermediate books. So if I think for that particular student, it's better to stay with Piano Adventures and keep the repertoire more simple and shorter, then we do Piano Adventures level 4. But if I think the student can take a little bit of a leap, then we'll go straight into intermediate repertoire. But I rarely use level 5 because level 5 repertoire is already intermediate. Now these are basic method books I use, but you don't have to be limited to these books. Sometimes I assign jazz books for students who are interested in jazz, or for recitals or other special projects, I pull repertoire from different books. Like I said in the beginning, there are so many different method books out there, and they're all trying to reach the same goal, but the order of the things they teach and the pace can be different depending on each method. So which method books you are going to use is going to be totally depending on your teacher. But one thing I would avoid is the books that has finger numbers on every single note. When I used to work for a big school, there were so many transfer students who came to my studio from different studios, and they all had different method books. And I can keep using most of those method books, but there's one book I really couldn't keep using. And in that book, every single note had finger numbers. So you can imagine what happens. Students are reading the numbers instead of the notes, so they don't even know where to set the hands in the beginning. Other than that, I haven't really seen any books that are toxic to the students. And just because I like Piano Adventures, that doesn't guarantee that's gonna work for everyone else. But I just wanted to share what I use, because many of you have asked. And you're welcome. The reason why I like Piano Adventures series over other method books is the repertoire. Although it is very subjective, they tend to use more fun music. And there are so many nice arrangements and duet parts by Nancy Faber, one of the authors of the books. There are tons of original pieces too. I like the design of the books too. Although it may sound silly, you're gonna look at these books every single day to practice, so it's nice to see this modern design, rather than these creepy characters. Or random pictures of pianos on the cubes. Look at this piano with wings. Alright, these are the books I use for my beginner students. As usual, if you learned something, please hit the like button so YouTube will know I'm putting out good content and start recommending to other people. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comment section. I'm still reading all the comments and trying to answer as many of them possible. If you are interested in the books I use for my intermediate students, I'll be happy to make a video for that as well. So please leave them in a comment. Okay, I'll see you in the next video, whatever the topic that's gonna be. Bye bye!